Welcome to News Trash, where we take an extended look at the more interesting happenings from the last 7 days from the world of video games. My name's Prob, and joining me today is the Mr. Newsman himself, Rob. Yes, we are doing total role reversal this week.
Oh, that feels dirty. It feels dirty, Rob. I'm not sure what to do about it, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So how are you in this sweltering heat that we're in?
There are parts of me that I don't want to talk about that are sweltering.
Yeah, well, I recently, today, visited me aunt and her dog, a cockapoo, was suffering from the heat too, and it was using me as a scratching post.
Scratching you is not going to make it cooler.
Well, it is what it is.
Shaving all the excess hair off will make it cooler.
He's a good boy anyway, so it's okay.
Did you do the voice?
I don't do dog voices. In fact, I go the opposite way and put on a deeper voice.
At least you didn't do the monotone voice where you pronounce every word perfectly. Who is a good boy? Who is a good boy?
Well,
that would just be weird.
It would. Anyway, we have some news to get through. 11 stories, to be precise.
Yes.
So let's get a cracking. The first one, new device news. And this one is that Valve has announced its Steam Deck, a Switch-style handheld gaming PC. There's going to be 3 SKUs, I think is the best word to describe them, and all of them will be shipping in December, with prices starting at $399. The 64GB version, which is a bit odd, and it jumps up to the 256 for $529 and the 512 gig for $649.
Yeah, now, we did mention the story several weeks ago. The thing is, we're going to be talking more about this in an upcoming episode of Impossible Mission, so we're not going to go into a lot of detail about this because we are going to talk about the hardware specs in that episode as well. But this is an interesting move from Valve. It's something that nobody really expected when we first announced the news and when they first announced the rumours that they were going to be making a handheld PC. And it's a growing market, and we'll have to see where it goes. I've watched the interview they did with IGN, and Gabe Newell has basically said, I mean, he looks like Gandalf now, I've got to say.
He's turning into Alan Moore.
Yeah, he looks like a space wizard. But he has said that what they're hoping to carve out a niche for a new type of PC device.
I'll be honest.
Computer device.
I'm kind of tempted, because I was thinking about updating my PC to be able to play games, like a bit high-spec games. But the cost of it compared to the cost of one of these, and I don't know, I think this might be more... I mean, obviously, this won't be updatable in the same way that a PC is, but I'm coming from a console background, so this sort of paid for in one chunk and not having to take bits out and scalp bits and fish with bits. It's more appealing, honestly. Yeah.
The other thing about it as well is that they're going to be taking pre-orders for this month. I think it's the 21st of July. But they're doing it in an interesting way, the pre-orders, in order to kind of deter the scalpers.
Yeah. You've got to pay for it. $5 or £4 for a down payment. For a down payment.
But not only that, in order to actually get one, you have to have purchased something from the Steam store before the 20th of June, 2021.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to stop people from scalping, but it will help.
Yeah, I think it'll help a lot because nobody knew when the release date for this was. Nobody knew when the pre-order date for this was. And
I don't know whether it'll help with... I don't think it's going to be as crazy to get one of these as it is with a typical Nintendo, Sony, or Xbox.
No.
But it's still going to be quite hectic because of the graphics card stuff.
Well, it's it's not so much the graphics cards, it's the semiconductor shortage, which is the big problem.
Yeah. Anyhow.
But anyway, yeah.
Moving on with the news. There was a recent interview which Phil Spencer did with Kinda Funny. Don't like Kinda Funny. They're not funny at all. Inaccurately described. But they did an interview with him. He did one recently as well with IGN with their Beyond podcast, which was a good podcast. Yeah. But Phil Spencer, is worried that gaming is losing its history. I mean, there's not really much else to add. But Yeah, let's go into the quote. I do worry a little bit about losing our art form. When I think about the old ROMs and MAME and these things of where these old games are going to go as the hardware that's capable of running these games, I really wish as an industry we come together to help preserve the history of what gaming is about, so we don't use the ability to go back. That's just really, either that's just badly transcribed or they've done it very literally.
I think they've done it very literally, but the weird thing is, I totally understood what he has actually said. See, the whole thing with ROMs and MAME and stuff like that, and the whole thing with emulation, part of it is heading towards video games preservation. I have long been very outspoken, and you know this yourself, Rob, about the fact that all of the console players and all of the modern gamers have basically ignored things like the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore Amiga, and just the sheer number of games that came out on those platforms. You know, the Amstrad, the PC Engine, all of those things, and they've basically been ignored for decades. They've been ignored.
Well, there's further quotes. Let's just to get a bit deeper. He says, as an industry, I would love it if we came together to help preserve the history of what our industry is about, so we don't lose access to some of the things that got us to where we are today and built this industry. That would be a cool thing. And he was questioned about Kinect. He said, Kinect is hard just because we don't support the device. That's one of the things about the games. When you go get these real bespoke hardware things, I go back to Steel Battalion or something, he said. So there's examples of old games with like tech which is gone.
Yeah. When he's talking about Steel Battalion, I think he's talking about that. That was MechWarrior 2 with the big controller. But I think Steel Battalion had a dedicated controller as well. There are some games, on the Dreamcast you had Densha de Go, which actually had a dedicated train controller.
Yeah, I mean, this is a mixed message, this. I can sympathise exactly with what he was saying and where he was coming from. But at the same time, he is the company which is pushing forward for Games Pass, and Games Pass is creating this platform where you don't own a thing. Everything is digital and there's no physical print. So he's saying one thing, but his business practices are completely, I wouldn't say completely contradictory, but the skewing towards contradictory.
Yeah, I would love to see a digital museum of video games. One where you could...
I don't know whether it's a digital one, but there is a video game museum in Sheffield.
There is, but I mean, when I say a digital one, I mean a platform kind of like Game Pass, I suppose, where a lot of these games, in fact, the majority of old video games, and when I say old, I'm talking about vintage, classic, antique video games even, things from like the very early 80s and late 70s, so, the old Atari things and the things that appeared on the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64, games of that era, and heading forward, you could basically host them all on this platform and you could pay a subscription to it, and if you wanted to, you could play the games from that platform, and you could basically just dip in whenever you felt like just seeing how video games were back in the day.
Okay, I want to stay with Phil Spencer for this next story.
Yeah.
He's been talking to The Guardian here in the UK, and he says he expects to see more companies acquired, but he specifically talked about a developer from India, Africa, or South America being acquired in the future.
Oh, that's interesting.
He says that
is very interesting.
Just knowing the talent that's available and the tools such as Unity and Unreal that are so much more accessible, I won't be surprised if in the next 3 to 5 years you don't see numerous studios, places that aren't the traditional hubs of games development.
Yeah. I know. We did that episode about China being a sleeping titan of video games, and as I think I mentioned in that episode, I think India is also another sleeping giant of video games. Africa as a continent, not specifically any country in Africa, but Africa as a continent is a massive market for video games. And South America is the same. The thing that I've always been surprised by is the casual arrogance of the video games industry and video gamers themselves, because it's all centered around the West, Europe and America and China, Japan and Korea.
Yeah.
And it seems like the rest of the world quite literally has been ignored.
Yeah. It's first world first, isn't it?
Yeah, and all of those countries, and the majority of Asia, you're talking Russia, China, India. That's like the majority of Asia right there.
Well, between China and Africa.
Mm.
No, hang on. China
and India. Yeah,
you've got half the world's population.
Almost, yeah.
Near enough, yeah.
Well, I think it's just over a third of the world's population, isn't it?
It's a third, but still, we're talking a big chunk of people in
exactly.
2 places.
Exactly, and this is the thing. I think that the video games industry has been quite loath to open its doors to embrace the sheer number of the sheer potential that those two countries have. But now it's getting to the point where they can't because of the tools that Phil Spencer mentions.
It's the same as with the movie industry. People have this impression that the movie industry revolves around Hollywood.
Yeah.
But people who think that underestimate just how huge the Indian film industry is. I would say Bollywood, but that's not all of it. That's just one corner. There's other parts which aren't so musical based. And the Chinese film industry. The Chinese film industry is huge.
Yeah, I mean, the Chinese film and television industry they've been producing some very interesting stuff. The Korean film industry is getting bigger. Japanese film industry we've always known about, but China...
honestly, the Japanese film industry has basically crashed. It's not doing particularly well, but go on.
That's why I didn't go into it. But China and India, which India in particular has historically always been a massive film industry. I think their revenue far outstrips what Hollywood makes.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because it kind of it's indicative of other industries to ignore these places. The movie industry ignores India and whatnot, so it's not a surprise that video games is doing it too, which is why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Next news story. Imagery from PlayStation products has reportedly been found in the Netflix app's code. Dataminer Steve Moser claims that Shark is the current working name of Netflix gaming functionality and states that the presence of the PlayStation imagery could indicate a partnership between Netflix and Sony, which may see PlayStation games being offered through Netflix in some way.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because we had that story a few weeks ago about there being rumours that Netflix was looking at getting into the video games market. And
the next story does continue from that, but I think this is interesting.
Yeah, because Sony have been pushing PlayStation Now quite recently. They've been really adding a lot of titles to it, haven't they?
Well, I wouldn't say pushing it. I mean, it was kind of like a Frankenstein's monster, and they've just gave it sort of a bolt of lightning, so at least it's up and moving now.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that it's up and moving, it's... and now you're finding, these data miners are finding these traces. There are, I would say that there's potential for a possible Netflix, PlayStation combination of some sort.
Yeah.
However that works, I don't know.
I don't know, honestly. Because it's just two completely different formats. Yeah. I don't know how it would talk to each other. There's so many ifs and hows that I'm a bit confused, honestly.
I know. I mean, I'm not sure how all of this would work together. I cannot see Netflix hosting PlayStation titles, and I can't see a PlayStation app being on Netflix, because that would just be stupid.
The Netflix app is on PlayStation, obviously.
Yeah.
Because that's how a lot of people do stream, but
PlayStation has an operating system. Netflix is not an operating system, is it?
No, it's just basically a glorified web browser.
Yeah.
That's essentially what the software is, which is confusing. However, it does segue nicely into the next story, in which Netflix have appointed a former Electronic Arts and Facebook executive to lead its expansion into video games.
So it's confirmed, then. Netflix are heading to video games.
Yes, Mike Verdu is the Vice President of Games Developer and will be reporting to Chief Operating Officer Greg Peters. Verdu was recently president of the Facebook AR/VR content.
Okay.
And he worked with to bring other games to Oculus headsets. So prior to that, he worked with Plants vs. Zombies, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and SimCity Build It. So it's
he's got. I wouldn't say he's like.
It's a specific type of gaming.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? Do you know what I would hate to see is, especially with the PlayStation stuff we were talking about just now. I would hate to see Netflix fluff this and basically go down the. Do you remember when you first got your Skybox? And
I don't have
there
one.
was the.
Sure.
When Sky first came out, or rather just after Sky first came out, and everyone was going, "Oh, you can play video games on this." And the video games that you could play with the Sky remote were all those, like, they were the very, very basic Match 3 type games. And very,
kind of like what you've got on the Fire Stick. It's basically Flappy Bird.
Yeah, I would hate for Netflix to basically do that.
I don't think so.
I don't think they're going to do it either.
I think it's going to be sort of not lowest common denominator, but sort of populist, general. Anybody could pick it up and have a go sort of gaming, like that's what the image I have of Plants vs. Zombies anyway.
The thing that we talked about before with E3, about how a third of the games at E3 were not violent games, I think the worst thing that a streaming service like Netflix could do is just overload itself with just violent game or sports game or violent game or sports game after violent game and sports game. I think that it needs to really curate the content that it's serving to people. Otherwise, it's just going to end up as a mess.
Yeah.
And that is the big danger with these things.
There's such a thing as diversifying your portfolio, and there's also such a thing as flooding your portfolio.
Exactly.
As in, another way to put it is, to call back to the Dead Space story we talked about a few weeks ago. Dead Space was great. And then I thought, oh, hang on, this Dead Space stuff is doing well. Let's make everything. And then people are like, hang on, kind of sick of this Dead Space stuff. What else you got?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's kind of what could happen too.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to more specific video game news for the back half, mostly. This one, Atlus are teasing 7 new announcements to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Persona series.
Let me guess. I'm going to take a wild guess here. If they're celebrating the Persona series anniversary, all of these games are going to be Persona somehow, aren't they?
No.
Are they not?
It says in 2021, the Persona series exceeded the cumulative worldwide sales of 15 million units.
Ooh, that's nice.
Express our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to all of those who have watched over and supported us over the years. In September, the Persona series will finally celebrate its 25th anniversary. To express our gratitude to you all, we will be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the series for 1 year, from September 21 to fall 2022. We'll be announcing various anniversary events, collaborations, and of course, game information. We'll be announcing a variety of special events in the near future. Please stay tuned.
Cool. I like Persona, but I think that I like the stylization of Persona. I like the fact that it really found its niche. But the thing that I find quite sad about Persona as a franchise is that it's part of the Shin Megami Tensei Tensei, whatever.
Megaten. Let's just call it Megaten.
Yeah, Megaten. It's part of the Megaten franchise, and there are other games within that sphere of the franchise that are also worth exploring.
Yeah. I really, really like Persona 5, don't get me wrong. But I would have liked it if it was less of an obligation.
Yeah, I'm
a game which you're taking 150 hours. Yeah. I can't do that.
I'm personally a big fan of Digital Devil Saga.
Yeah.
And that, the last time I saw a Digital Devil Saga game was on the PlayStation 2. So, I think, what about you, a new Digital Devil Saga game? People of the Persona franchise?
It is Persona, but
yeah,
I think the success of Persona can, frankly, spread out to the other series, the rest of the series.
It's weird because Japanese games have been doing particularly well recently. Final Fantasy XIV, for example, they ran out of digital codes.
Hey! Who's reading the news here, mister?
No,
sneaking your stories in here.
No, the thing is, Final Fantasy XIV has officially become the biggest MMO on the planet, right? And it got so bad because you've had a bunch of old World of Warcraft streamers who've recently moved across to Final Fantasy. Yeah. Bellula and Asmongold. Asmongold in particular, because he's like the World of Warcraft streamer. And because of that movement, that kind of sideways movement, and even though he was just, Asmongold was just dipping his toes into Final Fantasy, the popularity exploded. I mean, this is a guy who gets like 200,000 people watching his streams. Popularity exploded, and it ran out of digital codes. Not physical copies, digital codes.
I don't have any horse in this race, but I will just say this. This is how, like, comparing it to Grand Theft Auto Online, and they're doing number 6 when they can be bothered. This is how you manage a secondary online thing, because they may not be putting things in it all the time, but they're putting like story content in it pretty regular to keep it engaging to people.
Well, I mean, the new expansion, Endwalker, is coming out later on this year.
It's one of those things that it's an online game which is being treated right rather than just, this is where all the money is going, so why not just, I don't know, let's just do this for a while.
Do you know the bizarre thing?
They're making it worth the while, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're making it worth the while, but the bizarre thing is that it's a Japanese developer, and Japanese developers historically have not done MMOs very well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got more stories to go.
Yep.
This one is sad for me, I'll be honest. Lost Judgment 2, aka maybe the final game in that series due to ongoing issues with Sega and actor Takuya Kimura's talent agency, it is claimed. A Japanese news website, Nikan Taishu, claims that sources tell it Kimura's talent agency, Johnny and Associates, have been blocking PC versions of the games in the Judgment series because they don't want Kimura to appear in PC games. Well, it's not entirely clear why this is. The site suggests that because Johnny and Associates, quotation marks, has strict control over the likeness of its talents and the use of their image online, it is still intended to a few. Don't know what that means. They're still limited to a few, sorry. The agency may be treating PC games differently because home computers have direct access to the internet. Okay.
Okay, I think this is one of those things where this is one of those news stories where I think that on the surface it looks quite bad, but I kind of knowing some of the Japanese industry as I do, I think that this is one of those things that they will eventually resolve. I don't think we've seen the last of the Judgment games.
Yeah, honestly, because number 1, they said, they're not going to get a number 2 because one of the actors was found to have taken cocaine.
Yeah.
And what do you know? He is number 2.
Yeah, and is that actor in number 2?
No, because he was just an incidental character in number 1.
Exactly. But
sort of like a pivotal character in the plot, but still, these characters don't really appear from game to game.
And
this is Yakuza,
The thing is, with something like his likeness and, the whole thing with PCs being connected to the internet, stuff like that, that sounds more like they've come up with an excuse.
Yeah, even as I was reading it, I thought, hang on, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's probably something a bit more legalistic and more complicated than that, which Sega have to work out with the talent agency and the actor themselves. I don't think the actor is against doing another Judgment game, and he's probably said to his agency he wants to do another Judgment game, but the agency, maybe they want a bigger fee for the next game, I don't know, but that's something that they'll work out with Sega as a separate thing. But in order to preserve face, they'll present this spurious argument. This is the reason why we're doing this.
Devil's advocate, even if this does go and become the truth, you can't do it because of internet. Ooh. I don't think let's be honest, it's not going to be the end of the Judgment series, because if the Yakuza series can basically say that's the end of Kiryu's story now, I don't think Yagami is a sacred horse that they can't replace.
No.
That's my only point. Right, sports news. It seems that every episode we have a story in which EA or FIFA has done something heinous. Well, guess what?
Did they do something heinous?
Yeah. Players who buy the standard edition of FIFA 22 on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One will not be able to upgrade to the next-gen versions for free only the Ultimate Edition, priced at $99.99 or £89.99, will come with dual entitlement.
What? I mean, we're currently in this era where cross-generation support is like the primary thing for a game. And EA want to charge for that?
Well, EA get money out of everything. They dry that stone, bleed that stone dry, you know.
Just FIFA, as an organisation, please just take the license away from EA and give it to anybody else.
The irony is, I'm kind of looking forward to this FIFA because apparently you can have Create a Club in career mode, and I would want to play the hell out of that.
Oh God, yes. Create a Club sounds amazing.
That's only a rumour, but honestly, this is just kind of just ugly. It's an ugly thing. I think NBA 2K21 did the same thing. So it's not like exclusively on the heads of EA and EA the only person who did this. This is the companies who are the most money hungry and greedy are the ones who seem a bit more eager to do this sort of thing and justify it as, just try and justify it however, you know.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I refuse to buy 2 copies of FIFA just so I could play it on PlayStation 5 if I buy it for the PlayStation 4. I would just wait until I bought a PlayStation 5 and just buy a second-hand copy of FIFA for that.
Wrapping up the final few stories here. Moving on to NBA, because I referenced it there, so it's a natural segue. But this is a big thing right now. NBA 2K franchise features first cover female athlete. WNBA MVP Candace Parker is going to be on the 25th anniversary edition of the game.
Oh, wow.
That is fantastic.
That's very, very good. I mean, that's a bit of a big move as well, because FIFA haven't... I would have expected FIFA to have started featuring people from, women's football.
It's also, maybe a
lot
bit
earlier.
wider. Yeah. They try. I mean, there's also rumours that apparently they're going to have the Indian Premier League of football in there.
Really?
Apparently. Rumours. But we'll see. We'll see. But it's just good for sport, you know, because...
Yeah.
I think the stigma where men's sport good, women's sport bad, like a lot of people actually still have that belief. It's much less common than it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's not equal by all means, and that's just a part of the society. Our society needs changing, honestly. But little things like this just sort of normalise things a bit.
I like the fact that it's these little things that help to make the bigger changes, because these little things they add texture to a lot of what happens in kind of the wider sense, if that makes sense. I think I'm not explaining this right, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I watched the Women's World Cup, and my God, they were so good. I felt sorry for, the English women's team, because I thought they really performed well. And this was before we saw what happened in the Euros and that. But I kept thinking, why can't the men's team be like them?
It's the men's sport, not just the men's team.
No, the men's team specifically. Why can't the English men's team be like the women's team? They were creative, they were imaginative, they were powerful. They were confident, and I just kept thinking, this is how the men should be playing. You need to learn from the women here. The women are doing this so much better.
Moving on, back to FIFA. Probably should have put this with the other FIFA story, but oopsie doopsie. But the hackers behind a significant EA data breach have begun releasing some of the stolen data publicly in a bid to extort the company. The perpetrators claimed in June to be in possession of 780 gigabytes of stolen data, which EA later confirmed included the source code for FIFA 21, the source code and tools for the Frostbite engine, which powers games including Battlefield, including proprietary EA frameworks and software development kits. According to Vice, the hackers have now released a 1.3 gig cache and threaten to leak more data if they don't contact us or don't pay us. We will keep posting it. Dun dun dun.
Why do I not feel sorry for EA?
They don't really do anything that makes you feel sorry for them,
I will not condone this sort of criminal behaviour, but by the same token, a lot of the stuff that EA does borders on the criminal. So I'm just kind of, I don't know how to feel about this story. I really don't. There's a part of me that wants to just laugh out loud, but there's also a part of me that wants to shake my fist at all the criminality, going, why can't you all get honest jobs?
Well, I don't really have anything to say about this, because, as I've said, I don't really care about EA. They've burned too many people, and they basically give the middle finger to people who disagree with their business practices.
Yep.
So if this is a little bit of karma, then this is a little bit of karma.
Yeah. I'll think of it like that. That's actually a good way to think about it.
Yes. Final story. This dates back to Tuesday, but a smuggler arrested with CPUs strapped to his body. Customs officials thought the truck driver looked nervous.
What?
As the Chinese language site HKEPC reported, the truck driver was stopped on June the 16th and was found to have a whopping 256 Intel CPUs, a mix of i7 10700s and i9 10900Ks strapped to his torso and legs.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, 250?
256.
That's going to be kind of heavy. 250 CPUs, okay, they're Intel i7s and i9s, and the Ryzen processor is currently the darling of the computing world. But that doesn't mean to say i7s and i9s are just going to fall by the wayside. There are things that they can do better than Ryzen's, and Ryzen's are good for things, in their own right.
Well, there's no such thing as the best device.
Yeah, there isn't.
Best graphics card. It's just
it's basically, yeah, exactly. But I mean, why smuggle them? I mean, where was he smuggling them from? Because they had to have come from outside of China.
Ah, yes. Why all the smuggling? This is according to Kotaku, where I found the website of the article. The global chip shortage is affecting almost every aspect of the electronic business, including CPU production and sales. Getting chips manufactured onto the mainline into Hong Kong is a good way to sell them on for massive profits, provided you don't get caught anyway. As under import and export ordinance, any person found guilty of importing or exporting unmanifested cargo is liable to a maximum fine of $2 million and imprisonment for 7 years.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense, I suppose, but there's got to be better ways than strapping them to yourself.
Not for this guy.
I mean, can you imagine? This has to have been several people. There have to have been several people involved in this, because there's no way he's going to be able to sellotape those things to himself.
Maybe that's why he was found. He did a really shoddy taping job.
Too much criminality, Rob. Too much criminality. Why can't you all get honest jobs?
And on that, this is all we have time for in this week's edition of News Trash. If you like what we do, check out our Patreon. Link is in the description, either of the podcast or the video, where we will find episodes of Director's Lottery, extra episodes of Pop Screen, as well as Doctor Who articles. Some of the Patreons are on screen now, but yeah, if you enjoyed what we do, thank you very much. Comment below, adding in the conversation on any of the topics that we brought up this week. But yeah, until next time, with more news and trash, and hopefully less sweating, thanks for listening.
Bye.